Human civilization in our past is generally differentiated into prehistory and history. Under prehistory, we study the thousands of years of human development, from hunting and gathering food to planting crops and building complex and ever-growing civilizations of villages and city centers. History, meanwhile, is the story of our journey from the construction of civilization to the conquest of the known world, the mastering of technique and technology, and the phase where the discussion turns away from humans as a whole and moves towards the stories of individual states, cities, families, and personalities. Well, one might ask, then how do we differentiate these two? How do we determine when prehistory ends and history begins? If these same questions arise in your mind, we have two words for you: language and literature. It is commonly believed that literature was first introduced in songs and poems used by tutors and travelers to tell stories and educate. Many local folk stories were transferred down different generations orally. While it was a tedious job memorizing them and many stories were altered and modified as time went on, songs and poems were also engaging ways of telling things. So when writing started becoming more widespread, the religious and moral stories were mostly compiled in verse rather than prose, which was reserved for the more mundane administrative and legal works. Another important takeaway from early literature is that so much of it was inherently religious in basis. It may have been because priests and religious scribes were amongst the very few people for whom writing, which is a complicated and mundane skill at that time, was a compulsion. That may also be the case because religion was probably the first global institute that used knowledge as a tool to gain more political and social influence. You see, in the case, knowledge is power. Thus, a lot of earlier fiction was religious or at least heavily influenced by it. The story of Gilgamesh, considered by many as the first written epic, talked about Mesopotamian gods and goddesses of that time. We hear about old texts like the Ramayana and Mahabharata of the Hindus, Homer's Iliad and Odyssey, other Greek and Roman epics like the Argonautica and Aeneid, stories of Norse mythology, and all of these talk of divine intervention of gods, the mortality of humans, and the evil nature of anti-gods. And we get a sense that these works were meant to educate and influence people as well as entertaining them. And they did influence us a lot, not just morally, but also as future forms of literature. And that is how English literature was born, inspired from religious texts and stories introduced by the invading Romans, the vicious Viking, and the Anglo-Saxons, among many others, and fostered among diversity and adversity to grow on as a significant influencer in today's world and the lives of its inhabitants. Now, you might be wondering, why the history of English literature? There's so many other languages in the world, each with its history of literature. Mandarin and Spanish are more often referred to by people as their first language compared to English. Yet, unlike these languages, English is widely spoken among billions of non-native speakers, and thus, it is indeed the lingua franca of today's world. English literature is also very well documented, and many modern literary works of recent times are influenced by Shakespeare, Milton, Wordsworth, and so on. English literature has a short but highly fascinating history, and the style, genre, and forms of writing have changed parallelly with the change in popular belief, spirituality, and human life in the past 1400 years or so. From the heroic epic of Beowulf and Chaucer's Canterbury Tales to Shakespeare's influential plays, the Romantic movement, and the evolution of sci-fi and magical realism, English fiction has changed a lot and influenced many, inspiring more authors along the way and significantly shaping the way readers, listeners, and viewers think and perceive things. Like so many of its stories, this journey of history of English literature is adventurous with its own ups and downs. The first steps of this journey begin next week when we discuss the importance of myths and legends in Old English literature. Till then, stay tuned with us. Thank you so much. Stay safe. Stay healthy.